Welcome to a journey through time, a voyage across billions of years where you can simply relax, breathe deeply, and let your mind drift through the most soothing facts about our ancient Earth. There's no need to remember everything, no need to stay alert. Just let these words wash over you like gentle waves, carrying you deeper into rest, while whispers of deep time lull you into peaceful sleep. Our planet has a story so vast, so incomprehensibly long, that contemplating it brings a special kind of tranquility, a perspective that makes our worries seem small and our existence feel connected to something timeless and grand. Imagine Earth as it was 4.5 billion years ago, a newborn world still glowing with the heat of its formation. There were no continents then, no oceans, no sky as we know it. Just a sphere of molten rock spinning in the darkness of space, bombarded by asteroids and comets, slowly cooling, slowly becoming the home we know today. This cooling process wasn't rushed. It took hundreds of millions of years, time beyond human comprehension, time that invites you to let go of urgency, to sink into the realization that Earth has always moved at its own patient pace. As you relax deeper into comfort, consider that the first oceans formed from countless comets delivering water to our planet's surface. Imagine billions upon billions of icy visitors from the outer solar system, each one crashing into early Earth, each one releasing its precious cargo of water vapor into the thickening atmosphere. Over millions of years, as the surface cooled below the boiling point of water, the steam condensed. Rain began to fall, and it fell for thousands of years without stopping, filling the lowest places, creating the first seas. These ancient oceans were not blue but green-tinted, filled with dissolved iron that would later rust and settle, painting layers of rock red and orange, creating the banded iron formations we find today. Let your breathing slow as you picture those first shorelines, where waves lapped against volcanic rock under a sky that was orange and thick with carbon dioxide. There was no oxygen to breathe back then, no ozone layer to filter the sun's radiation. But Earth was patient. It had time. It had nearly 4 billion years to prepare for life as we know it. And in those ancient seas, something extraordinary was beginning, something that would change everything, though it would happen so gradually that if you could watch it unfold, you'd need to observe for millions of years to notice the transformation. The first life on Earth appeared perhaps 3.5 billion years ago, simple single-celled organisms that we call prokaryotes, cells without nuclei, the ancestors of bacteria. They lived in the oceans, thriving in warm, mineral-rich waters near hydrothermal vents, those underwater geysers where superheated water pours up from cracks in the ocean floor. These early microbes didn't need oxygen. They metabolized sulfur and other chemicals, living in what we would consider a hostile environment, yet they were perfectly adapted, perfectly at home. For 1 billion years, these microscopic pioneers were the only life on Earth, and that's a comforting thought in its own way. A reminder that life doesn't rush, doesn't hurry toward complexity, but simply exists, generation after generation, in whatever form works. As you drift deeper into relaxation, know that around 2.5 billion years ago, some of these microorganisms developed a new talent: photosynthesis. Cyanobacteria, sometimes called blue-green algae, began using sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars, releasing oxygen as a waste product. This was perhaps the most important innovation in Earth's history, though it happened quietly, in countless tiny cells floating in ancient seas. At first, the oxygen they produced didn't accumulate in the atmosphere. It reacted immediately with dissolved iron in the oceans, causing it to precipitate out and settle to the seafloor, creating those striking banded iron formations. Layers of rock striped red and black like a cosmic layer cake. This process continued for hundreds of millions of years, the oceans slowly releasing their dissolved iron, the seafloor accumulating thick deposits of what would one day become important ore for human civilization. But the cyanobacteria kept photosynthesizing, kept releasing oxygen, patient and persistent. Eventually, around 2.3 billion years ago, the oceans could hold no more iron. The oxygen began to escape into the atmosphere, and Earth experienced what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event, a transformation so profound it changed the planet's chemistry, its geology, its future potential for complex life. Let this timeline soothe you, this recognition that Earth's greatest changes happened slowly, incrementally, through the accumulation of tiny actions repeated endlessly. There's no urgency in deep time, only patience. The rising oxygen levels were actually poisonous to most organisms alive at the time. What we breathe to live would have killed our planet's earliest inhabitants. Many species went extinct in this oxygen catastrophe, unable to adapt to the new chemistry of their world. But some organisms evolved the ability to use oxygen for metabolism, discovering that it provided far more energy than the old anaerobic processes. This was the beginning of aerobic respiration, the process your own cells use right now as you rest, as you breathe in and out. Connected across billions of years to those first oxygen-breathing microbes. For the next billion years or so, Earth remained a world of microbes. Single-celled organisms diversified, evolved, adapted to every available niche in the oceans. Some became predators, engulfing other cells. Some formed colonies, working together in ways that benefited the group. And somewhere in this vast expanse of time, perhaps around 2 billion years ago, one of the most important events in evolutionary history occurred: endosymbiosis. A larger cell engulfed a smaller bacterium but didn't digest it. Instead, the bacterium survived inside its host, and the two formed a partnership. The bacterium became a mitochondrion, the powerhouse of the cell, and its host became the first eukaryote, the first cell with a nucleus and internal compartments. This peaceful merger created the blueprint for all complex life, including you, resting here now, your own cells powered by mitochondria that still carry their own DNA, evidence of their bacterial ancestry. Let that connection comfort you, link you to the deepest past, remind you that you are made of ancient partnerships, collaborations that have endured for billions of years. From these first eukaryotes came all the diversity of complex life: protists, algae, fungi, plants, animals. But that diversification took time, enormous stretches of time that invite you to release any sense of hurry, any pressure to rush. Around 1 billion years ago, the first multicellular organisms appeared, simple collections of cells that worked together, divided labor, created structure. These weren't yet plants or animals as we'd recognize them, but they were a step toward complexity, toward the beautiful diversity of life that would eventually fill every corner of the planet. The oceans of this time were still the only realm of life. The land remained barren, lifeless rock and sand under that ancient sky. But in the seas, evolution was experimenting, trying out new forms, new strategies for survival. As you sink deeper into rest, imagine Earth around 600 million years ago, in a period called the Ediacaran. The first large, complex organisms appeared in the fossil record from this time. Strange, soft-bodied creatures unlike anything alive today. They looked like quilted fronds, like air mattresses, like nothing we can easily compare to modern life. They lived on the seafloor, possibly absorbing nutrients directly through their skin, swaying in the currents of those ancient oceans. Their world was quiet, peaceful, free from predators because predation, as we know it hadn't been invented yet. These Ediacaran organisms lived in a kind of Eden, a time before the evolutionary arms race between hunters and hunted. That peaceful time ended around 540 million years ago with the Cambrian explosion, though calling it an explosion is somewhat misleading. This diversification of life took place over tens of millions of years, which is sudden in geological terms, but still an expanse of time far longer than human civilization. During the Cambrian, animals developed hard parts like shells and exoskeletons, which is why they suddenly appear in the fossil record in great numbers. Before this, soft-bodied organisms rarely fossilized, leaving only traces and impressions. Now we find trilobites, those iconic arthropods with their segmented bodies and compound eyes, ancestors of modern insects, spiders, and crustaceans. The Cambrian seas were full of experimentation, strange body plans that would never appear again. There were anomalocaris, predators up to 3 feet long with circular mouths ringed with teeth and large grasping appendages for catching prey. There were Apobinia with 5 eyes and a long flexible proboscis tipped with a claw. There were Hallucigenia, tiny worms covered in spines that walked on paired legs, their fossils so strange that scientists initially reconstructed them upside down. Let these bizarre creatures populate your dreams, these ancient forms of life that prove the universe has more imagination than we can anticipate. Breathe slowly and know that while all this life flourished in the oceans, the land remained empty, waiting. The first pioneers to colonize the land were plants, beginning around 470 million years ago with simple moss-like organisms that hugged the ground, staying close to water. They had no roots yet, no way to transport water and nutrients up a stem, so they remained small, carpet-like. But they began the transformation of the continents, their organic matter mixing with rock and minerals to create the first true soils. As plants evolved taller forms, as they developed vascular systems to transport fluids and structural tissues to stand upright, they created new opportunities. By 400 million years ago, forests of primitive plants were established. Strange forests of giant mosses and early ferns and plants, called lycopods, that would later grow into towering trees during the Carboniferous period. These forests created shade, changed the chemistry of the air, provided habitat for the first land animals, arthropods like millipedes, spiders, and scorpions, followed eventually by the first vertebrates to leave the water. Imagine the world around 360 million years ago, when the first tetrapods, 4-limbed vertebrates, were hauling themselves out of swamps and streams. Breathing air with primitive lungs, ancestors of all amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. These early pioneers were experimenting with life on land, and the fossils show species with 7 or 8 fingers on each limb, as if evolution was trying different numbers before settling on the 5-digit pattern that most land vertebrates share today. Let this remind you that even our bodies are products of ancient experiments, trials that worked well enough to persist across hundreds of millions of years. The Carboniferous period, from about 360 to 300 million years ago, was a time of vast swamp forests, towering club mosses and horsetails and ferns that grew over 100 feet tall. The climate was warm and wet, and plants thrived, pulling carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and locking it away in their tissues. When these plants died and fell into the swamps, they didn't fully decay because the microbes and fungi that could break down lignin, the tough material in wood, hadn't evolved yet. Instead, the plant material accumulated, layer upon layer, slowly being compressed and transformed by heat and pressure into coal, the fossil fuel that powered the Industrial Revolution. Energy from sunlight captured by plants in those ancient swamps. The oxygen levels during the Carboniferous rose higher than at any time before or since, perhaps as high as 35% compared to today's 21%. This allowed arthropods to grow to enormous sizes. Dragonflies with wingspans of over 2 feet buzzed through those primordial forests. Millipedes stretched 6 feet long, armored and segmented, crawling through the undergrowth. Giant scorpions and spiders stalked the forest floor. It was a world that would seem both familiar and alien, recognizable in its basic forms but different in scale and proportion. As you relax, picture yourself walking through one of those forests, the air thick and humid, the sounds of buzzing and rustling all around, but you are safe, simply an observer in this ancient time. Around 300 million years ago, the continents were drifting toward each other, pushed and pulled by convection currents in Earth's mantle, the slow churning of semi-molten rock deep below the crust. Continental drift happens at about the same rate your fingernails grow, a few centimeters per year, which means in a human lifetime the continents barely move. But over millions of years they travel thousands of miles, colliding and separating, rising mountains and opening oceans. During the late Carboniferous and early Permian, the continents merged to form Pangaea, a supercontinent that united nearly all of Earth's landmass into one giant piece. Imagine looking down at Earth from space 250 million years ago and seeing Pangaea, a vast C-shaped landmass surrounded by a single global ocean called Panthalassa. The interior of Pangaea was harsh, far from any ocean, creating enormous deserts where only the hardiest life could survive. But along the coasts and in more moderate climates, life flourished in new forms. The first large reptiles evolved, some of them ancestors of dinosaurs and birds, others leading to the mammal lineage. These proto-mammals, called synapsids, included some of the top predators of their time, large-headed carnivores with powerful jaws. The Permian period ended 252 million years ago with the most catastrophic extinction event in Earth's history, the Great Dying, when perhaps 96% of all marine species and 70% of land vertebrate species went extinct. The causes were complex. Massive volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia, releasing enormous amounts of lava and toxic gases, triggering global warming, ocean acidification, and widespread oxygen depletion in the seas. It was the closest life on Earth ever came to complete annihilation. The recovery took millions of years, and when life rebounded, it was different, transformed, ready for a new chapter. Let the resilience of life comfort you as you rest, the knowledge that even after the worst catastrophe, life persisted, adapted, diversified again. The Triassic period that followed the Great Dying saw the rise of the dinosaurs. Though they started small, unremarkable among the many reptile groups competing for dominance. Early dinosaurs were modest, bipedal creatures no larger than dogs, living in the shadow of larger reptiles and proto-mammals. But they had certain advantages, an upright posture that made them more efficient runners, perhaps more efficient metabolisms, perhaps better parental care. Slowly, over tens of millions of years, they diversified and grew larger. By the Jurassic period, around 200 million years ago, dinosaurs had become the dominant land vertebrates, and they would remain so for over 130 million years, a reign far longer than mammals have yet achieved. Picture the Jurassic world, warm, humid, lush with vegetation, seas teeming with marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs, skies filled with pterosaurs, leathery-winged reptiles that soared on thermals and hunted fish from the waves. On land, massive sauropods like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus browsed the treetops, their long necks reaching leaves that other herbivores couldn't access. These giants moved in herds across vast distances, following seasonal rains and fresh vegetation, their footsteps shaking the ground, their collective breathing creating rhythms that echoed through the forests. They lived slow lives compared to smaller dinosaurs, taking decades to reach full size, possibly living for 100 years or more, peaceful herbivores whose main defense was their enormous bulk. Imagine the calm of being near such a creature, unthreatened because of your size, simply existing, eating, moving with your herd, a life of simple needs and steady rhythms. The Cretaceous period followed, the last age of dinosaurs, lasting from about 145 to 66 million years ago. This was when dinosaurs reached their peak diversity, including famous species like Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, and Velociraptor. But the Cretaceous was also when flowering plants appeared, revolutionizing terrestrial ecosystems. Before this, plants reproduced with spores or seeds in cones, like modern ferns and pine trees. Flowering plants developed a partnership with insects, using bright petals and sweet nectar to attract pollinators, ensuring more efficient reproduction. This innovation was so successful that flowering plants quickly diversified and spread, creating the forests and grasslands that still dominate the world today. Alongside them evolved specialized pollinators, bees, butterflies, moths, all part of intricate ecological relationships that added new layers of complexity to life on Earth. Let these connections soothe you. These networks of mutual benefit, plants and pollinators co-evolving, each shaping the other, creating beauty as a side effect of survival. The age of dinosaurs ended 66 million years ago, when an asteroid approximately 6 miles wide struck the Earth near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs, creating a crater over 100 miles across, sending massive tsunamis racing across the oceans, triggering earthquakes and volcanic eruptions worldwide. Debris from the impact was thrown into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun for months or years, causing global temperatures to plummet. Fires ignited by the heat of re-entry burned across continents. Photosynthesis stopped, plants died, herbivores starved, carnivores followed. 3/4 of all species went extinct, including all non-avian dinosaurs. But this catastrophe created opportunity for the survivors. Mammals, which had remained small and mostly nocturnal during the age of dinosaurs, suddenly found themselves in a world with empty niches, available resources, and less competition. They diversified rapidly, evolving into countless forms. Some returned to the seas and became whales, some took to the air as bats, some grew enormous like the later mammoths and giant ground sloths. Others remained small and agile. Primates appeared in the fossil record around 55 million years ago, small tree-dwelling creatures with grasping hands and forward-facing eyes, ancestors of monkeys, apes, and eventually humans. Let yourself drift through these millions of years of mammal evolution, feeling no need to track every detail, just absorbing the broad sweep of change, the patient unfolding of new forms. Around 34 million years ago, Antarctica separated from South America, allowing the formation of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, which isolated Antarctica and caused it to cool dramatically, developing the ice sheets that cover it today. This marked the beginning of the current ice age cycle, though we rarely think of ourselves as living in an ice age. We are, technically, in an interglacial period, a warm phase between glacial advances, and this pattern of freezing and thawing has dominated the last few million years of Earth's climate. During glacial periods, ice sheets advanced south, covering much of North America and Eurasia, locking up so much water that sea levels dropped hundreds of feet, exposing land bridges like the one that connected Siberia to Alaska, allowing humans and animals to migrate between continents. During interglacials like our current Holocene epoch, the ice retreated, sea levels rose, climate warmed, and life spread into the previously frozen territories. These cycles repeat every 100,000 years or so, driven by subtle changes in Earth's orbit and axial tilt, called Milankovitch cycles, tiny variations that have huge effects over time. Around 7 million years ago, in Africa, the lineage that would lead to humans diverged from the lineage leading to chimpanzees and bonobos, our closest living relatives. The early hominins were still ape-like, living in trees and on the ground, but gradually they evolved upright posture, freeing their hands for tool use, developing larger brains. More complex social behaviors. Fossil after fossil shows this transition. Australopithecus, small-brained but bipedal, living around 3 to 4 million years ago. Homo habilis. The handyman, using simple stone tools around 2 million years ago. Homo erectus, with larger brains and more sophisticated tools. Spreading out of Africa into Asia and Europe around 2 million years ago. These ancestors of ours lived lives we can barely imagine, hunting and gathering in small groups, making tools from stone and wood and bone, controlling fire to keep warm and cook food, slowly developing language and culture. They endured ice ages, migrations, encounters with other hominin species like Neanderthals and Denisovans. They painted in caves, carved figurines, buried their dead with ceremony, showing the first glimmers of symbolic thought, art, spirituality, the things that make us distinctly human. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago, though we didn't look exactly like we do now, and our behavior was still relatively simple. It wasn't until around 70,000 years ago that something changed, perhaps a genetic mutation, perhaps a cultural innovation. And humans began to think and communicate in the sophisticated ways we recognize today. We spread out of Africa in waves, colonizing every continent except Antarctica, adapting to every environment from tropical rainforests to Arctic tundra, developing thousands of distinct cultures and languages. But even this human story, as important as it seems to us, is just the most recent chapter in Earth's vast history. If we compressed all of Earth's 4.5 billion years into a single 24-hour day, life wouldn't appear until around 4 in the morning. Complex life wouldn't emerge until after 8 at night. Dinosaurs would rule for about 3/4 of an hour before going extinct at 23 minutes to midnight. All of human civilization, from the first agricultural settlements to the present, would occupy the last few seconds before midnight. This perspective is humbling and comforting at once, a reminder that we are part of something much larger and older than ourselves, that the world has witnessed transformations beyond imagining and will continue long after we're gone. As you rest here, feel yourself connected to this deep history, made of atoms forged in ancient stars, shaped by evolution across billions of years. Part of an unbroken chain of life, stretching back to the first cell in the first ocean on the young Earth. The rocks beneath our feet remember all of this. Sedimentary layers accumulate slowly, grain by grain, recording floods and droughts, volcanic eruptions and meteor impacts, the rise and fall of oceans. Each layer is a page in Earth's diary, and geologists read them like books, deciphering the past from clues left in stone. Some rocks are over 3.5 billion years old, among the oldest materials on Earth's surface, and they carry minerals and isotopes that tell us about the ancient atmosphere, the ancient oceans, the conditions that allowed life to begin. Fossils are time capsules, organisms that died and were buried in just the right conditions to preserve their shape, sometimes in exquisite detail. Paleontologists spend careers carefully excavating these remnants, brushing away matrix grain by grain, revealing bones that haven't seen light for millions of years. Each fossil is precious, a window into the past, evidence of life's incredible diversity. The vast majority of species that ever lived are extinct, known only from fossils if we're lucky enough to find them. Most species left no trace at all, their existence unrecorded except in the genes they passed to their descendants. Consider the Burgess Shale in Canada, a rock formation from the Cambrian period about 500 million years old. It preserves soft-bodied organisms in stunning detail, animals that would normally leave no fossil record. There we see the diversity of early animal life, the experiments that worked and those that didn't, body plans that seem alien and strange. Or consider the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where Ice Age animals became trapped in natural asphalt seeps, their bones preserved and accumulated over tens of thousands of years, giving us an incredibly complete picture of the megafauna that lived in Southern California just 15,000 years ago. Saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, giant ground sloths, mammoths. Each of these sites is a gift from deep time, a place where the past became accessible, where we can touch bones and shells and leaves from worlds long vanished. Let your mind wander through these ancient landscapes, imagining the sounds and smells, the textures of bark and stone, the feeling of rain that fell when continents were in different places, when the stars were arranged slightly differently in the sky, when Earth was spinning just a little faster and days were a few minutes shorter than they are now. Yes, Earth's rotation is gradually slowing due to tidal friction with the Moon, losing about 2 milliseconds per century. Billions of years ago, days were much shorter, perhaps only 18 hours long, and the Moon was closer, looming larger in the sky, creating stronger tides. The Moon itself was born from a catastrophic collision early in Earth's history, when a Mars-sized object struck the young planet, vaporizing both crusts and sending debris into orbit that coalesced into our satellite. This hypothesis, called the giant impact theory, explains why the Moon's composition is so similar to Earth's mantle, why it's so large relative to its planet, and why it's slowly spiraling away from us, gaining distance at about 1.5 inches per year. 4 billion years from now, if Earth still exists, the Moon will be much farther away, appearing smaller in the sky, creating weaker tides. And Earth's day will have lengthened to perhaps 25 or 30 hours. But by then, other changes will have transformed our world. The sun is slowly getting brighter as it ages, fusing hydrogen into helium in its core, and in about 1 billion years it will be hot enough to boil Earth's oceans, ending life as we know it. In 5 billion years, the sun will exhaust its hydrogen fuel and expand into a red giant, possibly engulfing Earth entirely, certainly rendering it uninhabitable. But these futures are so distant they're almost abstract, and in the meantime, Earth continues its patient turning, its continents still drifting, its mountains still rising and eroding, its oceans still cycling water between sea and sky and back again. The same processes that shaped the ancient world are still at work today, though usually too slow for us to notice in our brief lifetimes. Volcanoes still build islands, glaciers still carve valleys, rivers still carry sediment to the sea, building deltas grain by grain. Evolution still shapes species in response to changing environments. The Atlantic Ocean is getting wider by about 1 inch per year as the Americas drift away from Europe and Africa, pushed by new seafloor forming at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a vast underwater mountain range where tectonic plates pull apart and magma wells up from below. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean is shrinking as its seafloor is subducted beneath surrounding continents, diving down into the mantle to be recycled. In about 250 million years, the continents may merge again into a new supercontinent, starting the cycle over, creating new mountain ranges, new climate patterns, new opportunities and challenges for whatever life exists then. Earth has seen many supercontinents come and go. Pangaea was just the most recent. Before it was Pannotia, and before that Rodinia, and before that others whose names and configurations we're still working out. Each assembly and breakup profoundly affected climate, ocean circulation, and the evolution of life. When continents merge, the total length of coastline decreases, reducing shallow marine habitats. Interior regions become isolated from moisture, creating vast deserts. When continents fragment, new oceans open, new coastlines form, climate becomes more moderated by marine influence, and biodiversity often increases. These cycles of supercontinent formation and breakup are driven by plate tectonics, the movement of Earth's lithosphere atop the flowing asthenosphere below. Heat from Earth's interior, generated by radioactive decay and leftover energy from the planet's formation, drives convection currents in the mantle. Hot material rises, spreads, cools, and sinks again, slowly turning over like a pot of thick porridge on a stove. The plates riding on this flowing rock are pushed, pulled, and dragged in different directions, creating the dynamic surface we live on. At some plate boundaries, plates collide, and one is forced beneath the other in a process called subduction. This creates deep ocean trenches, volcanic arcs, and earthquakes as the descending plate grinds against the overriding plate and melts in the intense heat and pressure below. The Andes Mountains in South America and the Cascade Range in the Pacific Northwest were built this way, and they're still growing, still experiencing volcanic eruptions and earthquakes as the process continues. The ring of fire around the Pacific Ocean marks subduction zones, a chain of volcanoes and earthquake-prone regions circling the ocean basin. At other boundaries, plates pull apart, and magma rises to fill the gap, creating new oceanic crust. This happens at mid-ocean ridges like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which runs down the center of the Atlantic Ocean from the Arctic to the Antarctic. The seafloor here is young, dark basalt rock, still warm from its formation. As you move away from the ridge, the seafloor gets progressively older, cooling and sinking slightly as it ages, creating the abyssal plains. Vast flat regions of the deep ocean floor, blanketed in fine sediment that has drifted down from above over millions of years. Where plates slide past each other horizontally, they create transform boundaries like the San Andreas Fault in California. These boundaries don't create or destroy crust, but the friction between plates causes them to lock together until stress builds to a breaking point. Then they suddenly slip, releasing energy as earthquakes. The San Andreas Fault marks the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate, and Los Angeles, on the Pacific Plate, is slowly moving northwest towards San Francisco. On the North American Plate, at about 2 inches per year. In about 15 million years, if the current motion continues, Los Angeles will be a suburb of San Francisco. These geological processes seem slow from a human perspective, but they're happening right now, constantly reshaping Earth's surface. Every year, GPS measurements show us how continents are moving, how strain is accumulating along fault lines, how mountains are rising and subsiding. Satellites can detect changes in elevation of just millimeters, tracking the subtle swelling of volcanoes before eruptions, the gradual sinking of land due to groundwater extraction, the rebound of regions that were pressed down by Ice Age glaciers and are now slowly rising as the weight is removed. This isostatic rebound is still happening in Scandinavia and Canada, regions that were buried under miles of ice as recently as 10,000 years ago. The ice is gone, melted into the oceans, but the land remembers. It's still rising, slowly springing back like a cushion after pressure is removed, lifting ancient beaches high above current sea level. Confusing early geologists who found marine fossils on mountaintops and wondered how they got there. Now we understand. The land was lower then, the sea came to it, and then the land rose. The ice ages themselves are fascinating chapters in Earth's recent history. For the past 2.5 million years, Earth has cycled between glacial and interglacial periods, driven by those Milankovitch cycles, variations in the shape of Earth's orbit, the tilt of its axis, and the wobble of that axis like a spinning top winding down. These changes are subtle, altering the amount and distribution of sunlight Earth receives by just a few percent, but that's enough to trigger the growth or melting of ice sheets. During glacial periods, ice sheets up to 2 miles thick covered much of North America, Northern Europe, and Northern Asia. So much water was locked in ice that sea levels dropped by over 300 feet, exposing continental shelves, creating land bridges. The climate was cooler and drier globally. Forests retreated toward the equator, deserts expanded. Megafauna like woolly mammoths, mastodons, and saber-toothed cats roamed the northern continents, adapted to the cold with thick fur and layers of fat. Then, around 15,000 years ago, the climate began to warm. The ice sheets retreated, melting rapidly in geological terms, though still over thousands of years from a human perspective. Imagine standing on the edge of a retreating glacier, watching it thin and pull back, hearing the rush of meltwater rivers, seeing exposed ground for the first time in tens of thousands of years. Plants colonize quickly, first hardy grasses and shrubs, then trees moving in as soils develop, forests spreading north following the ice's retreat. Animals migrate too, following the vegetation, establishing new populations in newly available territories. Humans followed the herds, crossing land bridges, adapting to new environments, developing new technologies and strategies for survival. The current interglacial, the Holocene, has been remarkably stable for the past 11,000 years. With relatively mild temperatures and predictable climate patterns that allowed human civilization to flourish. Agriculture developed independently in several regions around this time, as people began to domesticate plants and animals, settling in permanent villages, eventually building cities and states and empires. All of recorded history has occurred during this warm, stable period, and we've become so accustomed to it that we forget how unusual it might be. But even within this stability, there have been variations. The medieval warm period around 900 to 1300 years ago, when Vikings colonized Greenland and wine grapes grew in England. The Little Ice Age from about 1400 to 1800 years ago, when winters were colder, glaciers advanced, and rivers that normally didn't freeze became solid enough for frost fairs. These fluctuations remind us that Earth's climate is always changing, always responding to countless factors: solar output, volcanic eruptions, ocean currents, atmospheric composition, orbital variations, and now human activities. Let yourself relax into acceptance of change, of impermanence, knowing that Earth has weathered every shift, every transition, and life has adapted, persisted, found ways to thrive. The past is full of extinctions, yes, but also of survivals, of lineages that endured mass dyings and radiated into new forms afterward. We are descendants of survivors, inheritors of adaptations honed over billions of years, carriers of DNA that has been tested and refined through countless generations. Consider your own body, this remarkable collection of cells working together, each cell containing mitochondria descended from ancient bacteria. Each cell operating according to instructions written in DNA, using the same genetic code shared by all life on Earth, from the simplest bacterium to the blue whale. Your hemoglobin molecules carry oxygen using iron atoms, the same element that rusted in ancient seas when cyanobacteria first produced oxygen. Your bones contain calcium and phosphorus minerals, similar to those in ancient shells and coral. You are made of earth, literally. Atoms cycled and recycled through countless organisms before becoming part of you. The water you drink might contain molecules that fell as rain on dinosaurs, that flowed in rivers through carboniferous forests, that were exhaled by ancient fish in Cambrian seas. Water cycles through the environment constantly, evaporating from oceans, condensing in clouds, falling as rain, flowing in rivers back to the sea, or soaking into groundwater, or being taken up by plants and animals, then released again. The average water molecule spends about 9 days in the atmosphere before falling as precipitation. But it might spend thousands of years frozen in a glacier or trapped in deep groundwater before returning to the surface. Carbon cycles too, faster in some reservoirs, slower in others. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is absorbed by plants during photosynthesis, built into sugars and starches and cellulose. Animals eat plants, breaking down those molecules for energy, releasing carbon dioxide back into the air. When organisms die, decomposers break them down, returning carbon to the soil or releasing it as carbon dioxide and methane. Some organic matter gets buried before decomposing, slowly turning into coal or oil or natural gas, locking carbon away for millions of years until humans extract and burn it, returning that ancient carbon to the atmosphere in just a few centuries. The carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have varied considerably over Earth's history, from much higher concentrations billions of years ago to much lower levels during glacial periods. These variations affected global temperature through the greenhouse effect, where certain gases trap heat radiating from Earth's surface, keeping the planet warmer than it would be otherwise. Without any greenhouse gases, Earth's average temperature would be below freezing, and the oceans would ice over completely. With too much, temperatures soar, as on Venus, where a runaway greenhouse effect has created surface temperatures hot enough to melt lead. Earth has maintained a habitable temperature range for billions of years through a kind of thermostat called the carbonate silicate cycle. Volcanic eruptions release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Rain absorbs carbon dioxide, forming weak carbonic acid that weathers rocks, dissolving minerals. These minerals wash into the ocean, where they're used by organisms to build shells and skeletons. When these organisms die, their remains settle to the seafloor, forming limestone, locking carbon away in rock. Eventually, tectonic processes carry this limestone down into the mantle where it melts, and the carbon is released again through volcanic eruptions, completing the cycle. This cycle operates over millions of years and acts as a negative feedback system, stabilizing climate. If Earth gets too hot, weathering speeds up, removing more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, cooling the planet. If Earth gets too cold, weathering slows down, allowing carbon dioxide to build up, warming the planet. It's not perfect, and it works on timescales too long to help with rapid changes, but it's one reason Earth has remained habitable while Venus became a hothouse and Mars became frozen and dry. Mars once had liquid water on its surface. Orbital spacecraft have photographed dry riverbeds, ancient lake basins, and minerals that only form in the presence of water. Billions of years ago, Mars was warmer and wetter, possibly habitable for life as we understand it. But Mars is smaller than Earth, with weaker gravity, and it lacks plate tectonics and a strong magnetic field. Its atmosphere gradually leaked away into space, thinned by solar wind. Without sufficient atmospheric pressure, liquid water could no longer exist on the surface. Mars dried out, became the cold, dusty desert we observe today, though frozen water still exists in polar ice caps and buried permafrost. This comparison makes Earth's habitability seem even more precious, more contingent on factors we often take for granted. Just the right size to hold an atmosphere, just the right distance from the sun for liquid water, plate tectonics to recycle materials and regulate climate. a magnetic field generated by a liquid iron core that shields us from harmful solar radiation. So many factors had to align for Earth to remain habitable for billions of years, and contemplating this improbability can either make us feel anxious about how fragile it all is, or grateful and peaceful about how fortunate we are to exist in this particular moment, on this particular world. Choose peace. Choose to feel connected to the vast web of causation that led to your existence. The formation of heavy elements in dying stars, the condensation of our solar system from a nebula, the cooling and differentiation of Earth, the origin of life, the evolution of photosynthesis, the oxygenation of the atmosphere, the development of complex cells, the diversification of multicellular life, the extinctions and radiations, the movements of continents, the fluctuations of climate, the evolution of primates and hominins and humans, the specific series of events and meetings and decisions that led to your parents' meeting, to you being born, to you being here right now, breathing, alive, part of this ancient and ongoing story. Geology teaches us patience, biology teaches us adaptability, paleontology teaches us impermanence and resilience. These sciences show us our place in the universe, not at the center but as participants, not separate from nature but entirely embedded in it, made by the same processes that made mountains and oceans and stars. There's something deeply restful in this perspective, a release from the illusion that we're apart from or above the natural world. We're in it of it, temporary expressions of matter and energy configured in a way that allows for awareness, for curiosity, for wonder. As you drift deeper toward sleep, let these truths settle into your consciousness. You are ancient, made of materials billions of years old. You are young, your specific configuration just decades old, unique and unrepeatable. You are connected to everything through shared history and shared substance. You are individual with your own thoughts and experiences. You are vast, containing multitudes of cells and microbes working together. You are small, a brief moment in deep time. All of this is true simultaneously, and accepting these apparent contradictions brings a kind of peace. The earth will continue its patient turning. The sun will rise and set. The moon will wax and wane. Seasons will cycle. Water will flow. Life will persist in countless forms, adapting, evolving, filling niches we can't imagine. And you are part of this continuity, a link in the chain, your existence proof that the universe can organize itself into consciousness, that matter can contemplate its own history, that the cosmos can wake up and ask questions about itself. Rest now in this knowledge. Let it comfort you that you belong here, that you're supposed to exist, that you're the product of 4.5 billion years of Earth's creativity. Tomorrow and the days after, you'll participate in this ongoing story, adding your small but irreplaceable part to the great unfolding of events. But for now, there's nothing to do, nowhere to be, nothing to accomplish. Just rest, breathe. Let yourself be held by the gravity of this ancient planet, supported by rock that remembers when there was no life at all. Breathing air created by billions of organisms before you, drinking water older than bones, older than stone. Sweet dreams of deep time, where everything is connected and nothing is truly lost, where endings are always beginnings, where the story is still being written and you're one of the authors. Sleep well, child of Earth, descendant of stars, cousin to every living thing. The planet holds you safe as it has held life for billions of years, spinning through space on its endless journey around the sun, around the galaxy, through the expanding universe. And you're along for the ride, resting, dreaming, being. In the quiet darkness of rest, consider the gift of fossils again, those messengers from vanished worlds. Think of the delicate imprint of a fern frond pressed into shale 300 million years ago, every detail of its leaves preserved as if it were pressed yesterday. Imagine the process. The fern fell into a still pond or lagoon, settled into fine mud, was covered quickly before it could decay. Over time, more sediment accumulated above it, pressing down with increasing weight. Minerals dissolved in groundwater seeped through the rock, molecule by molecule replacing the organic material of the fern with stone, creating a perfect replica in stone of something that once lived and photosynthesized and grew. Some fossils are body fossils, preserving actual remains like bones or shells or wood. Others are trace fossils, recording the activities of organisms rather than their bodies. Footprints in ancient mud now turned to stone, burrows dug in seafloors long since uplifted into mountains. Scratch marks where a predator's claws dragged across rock. These trace fossils are often more evocative than body fossils because they show behavior, capture a moment of action frozen in time. Dinosaur footprints found in rock tell us not just that dinosaurs existed, but how they moved, how fast they walked or ran, whether they traveled alone or in groups, whether adults and juveniles moved together. One famous trackway in Texas shows the footprints of a large theropod dinosaur following smaller sauropod footprints, appearing to stalk them. Whether this was actual predatory behavior or just coincidental overlap of tracks made at different times, we can't know for certain, but the possibility invites our imagination. Let's us picture that moment. The predator lowering its head, the herbivore quickening its pace, the ancient drama playing out under a Cretaceous sky. Let this scene unfold in your mind without tension, without fear, simply as something that happened countless times, part of the endless cycle of eating and being eaten that sustains ecosystems. Death in nature is rarely cruel in the human sense. Predators kill to eat, not from malice. Prey animals often experience shock that dulls pain. The suffering we imagine might be more projection than reality. What's certain is that death feeds life, that nutrients cycle from organism to organism, that nothing is wasted in natural systems. The dinosaur that died and was eaten became part of the predator's body, and when the predator died, its body fed scavengers and decomposers, returned nutrients to the soil, fed plants, continued the cycle. This has been happening for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans invented concepts like tragedy or injustice or waste. There's a strange comfort in the impersonality of natural processes, the recognition that storms don't punish anyone, volcanoes don't harbor grudges, earthquakes aren't expressions of anger. Earth simply does what it does, following physical laws, responding to forces, creating and destroying without intention or emotion. Mountains rise because tectonic plates collide and crust crumples upward. They erode because gravity pulls water downhill and water is patient, wearing away even the hardest rock grain by grain over millions of years. The Appalachian Mountains in eastern North America are ancient, worn down from what were once peaks possibly as tall as the modern Himalayas. They formed around 300 million years ago when continents collided to form Pangaea, crumpling the crust into enormous folds and thrust faults. At their peak, they may have stood 6 miles high or more, but hundreds of millions of years of rain and ice and wind have worn them down to rounded ridges and gentle slopes, exposing rocks that formed deep in the crust, now visible at the surface, because miles of overlying material have eroded away. But even if Earth is the only living world in the universe, which seems statistically unlikely given the billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, even if we're utterly alone, that makes life here no less precious, no less worthy of wonder. Perhaps more so, if we're the only instance of matter organizing itself into consciousness, the only place where the universe looks back at itself and asks why. That would be an enormous responsibility and an enormous privilege, to be the universe's only way of knowing itself. More likely, though, Life is relatively common in the universe, arising wherever conditions permit, because the chemicals of life are common and the laws of chemistry are universal. Water, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, the elements essential for life as we know it. These are among the most abundant elements in the universe. Amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, form in interstellar space and have been found in meteorites. The organic chemistry that leads to life seems to happen naturally given the right conditions. What's rare might not be simple life but complex life, multicellular organisms, intelligence, technology, civilization. Earth had single-celled life for over 2 billion years before complex multicellular organisms appeared. And even then, it took hundreds of millions more years for intelligence and technology to emerge. Maybe that's the typical pattern, if there is one. Maybe the universe is full of microbial life on worlds we haven't yet discovered, but complex technological civilizations are rare, separated by vast distances of space and time, unlikely ever to encounter each other. Or maybe we're unusual in some other way, and the galaxy is full of civilizations communicating in ways we haven't learned to detect yet. These questions are profound and perhaps unanswerable with our current knowledge, but they're worth contemplating because they expand perspective. They connect our small human story to the larger cosmic context. We're made of stardust, literally, atoms forged in stellar furnaces billions of years ago, scattered into space by supernovae, eventually accreting into new stars and planets, including our Sun and Earth. The carbon in your cells, the oxygen you breathe, the iron in your blood, all were created in dying stars long before our solar system existed. You carry the cosmos within you. When ancient peoples looked up at the stars, they saw gods and heroes, patterns and stories. Now we know those points of light are other suns, many with their own planets, some possibly bearing life. We know that light takes time to travel, so when you look at a star, you're seeing it as it was years or decades or centuries ago, depending on its distance. The light from some stars left before you were born, traveled across space while you grew up, and arrived at your eye tonight. You're looking into the past every time you look up at the night sky. The Andromeda Galaxy, visible to the naked eye on a dark night as a faint smudge, is 2.5 million light-years away. The light you see left Andromeda 2.5 million years ago, when early human ancestors like Homo habilis were just beginning to use simple stone tools in Africa. That light has been traveling through space all this time, through the rise and fall of countless species, through ice ages and warm periods, through the evolution of modern humans and the development of civilization, finally arriving at your eye tonight, completing its journey. And in another 2.5 million years, give or take, Andromeda will collide with the Milky Way, our two galaxies merging into one larger galaxy. Their stars passing mostly harmlessly through each other, because the distances between stars are so vast. This collision won't be violent in the way we usually think of collisions. Stars almost never actually hit each other because space is mostly empty. But gravity will reshape both galaxies, flinging some stars into new orbits, drawing others together, possibly triggering new waves of star formation as gas clouds collide and compress. Over billions of years, the two spiral galaxies will become one elliptical galaxy, a different shape, a different configuration, but still a collection of stars and planets and dust and gas. Still a home for whatever life exists then. Our sun will probably survive this merger, though it might end up in a different part of the new galaxy, orbiting the combined center on a new path. By the time that merger happens, if Earth and humanity still exist in some form, we'll have had billions of years to prepare, to adapt, to spread to other star systems if we choose. Or perhaps by then, we'll have transformed into something so different from current humans that the concept of humanity will seem as quaint as we find the concept of Australopithecus. Evolution doesn't stop after all. We're not the end point but a way station, a temporary form that will give rise to whatever comes next. This thought might be unsettling or might be liberating, depending on perspective. There's something freeing about acknowledging that we're not permanent, that we're part of a process larger than ourselves, that our individual lives, and even our entire species, are brief moments in a much longer story. It removes the pressure to be everything, to accomplish everything, to somehow transcend the limitations of biology and time. We can just be what we are, do what we can, contribute our small part to the ongoing narrative, and then let go, trusting that the process will continue without us, as it did before us. The geological record is full of extinctions, moments when dominant groups disappeared and other groups rose to fill the vacuum. After the dinosaurs went extinct, mammals diversified. After the Permian extinction eliminated most marine life, new forms evolved to inhabit the empty niches. Life doesn't mourn what's lost. It moves forward, adapts, continues. There's something ruthless about this, but also something beautiful, a demonstration of life's fundamental drive to persist, to fill available space, to make use of available resources, to continue the experiment of consciousness and complexity. You're part of that experiment, a success story just by virtue of existing. Your ancestors survived every challenge thrown at them: predators, diseases, famines, climate shifts, competition from other organisms. They survived long enough to reproduce, passing their genes forward through countless generations, a chain unbroken from the first cell to you. Every person alive today is the product of an unbroken line of successful reproduction, stretching back billions of years. That's remarkable when you think about it, statistically improbable and yet certain, because here you are, proof that it happened. And your existence enables you to contemplate these things, to think about deep time and ancient earth, to feel connected to processes billions of years old, to find peace in perspective. Not everyone does this, not everyone wants to, and that's fine. But if you're here, listening to these words, letting them carry you towards sleep, then some part of you resonates with this view, finds comfort in the long view, in the recognition that your life is both infinitesimally small and infinitely precious, a unique configuration of matter and energy that will never be exactly repeated. The atoms that make you up have been part of countless other things before becoming you. The oxygen you just breathed in was produced by a plant yesterday or last week, and before that it was part of a carbon dioxide molecule. And before that it was part of a different person's exhalation, and before that it was in a different plant, cycling round and round through the biosphere. The carbon in your body might have been in a dinosaur once, in a tree during the Carboniferous, in a trilobite in the Cambrian seas, in the atmosphere of early Earth, in an asteroid before that, in a dying star billions of years ago. Your matter is ancient and well-traveled, and when you die, it will be redistributed, become part of other organisms, continue the cycle. This isn't morbid, just factual, and there's peace in facts, in acknowledging what's true without fighting it or fearing it. Death is part of the cycle, necessary for the cycle to continue, making room for new life, returning materials to circulation. In nature, death is usually quick or unconscious, without the existential dread that humans experience because we can anticipate and imagine it. Other organisms simply live until they don't, without worrying about it, without building elaborate cultural systems to deny or postpone it. They exist in the present, which is all any organism can actually occupy. And the present is where rest happens, where sleep occurs, where healing and restoration take place. You can't sleep in the past or the future, only now, in this moment, in this body, in this place. All those billions of years led to this moment, created the conditions for you to be here, breathing, relaxing, drifting towards sleep. Honor that gift by accepting it, by letting yourself rest without resistance, without replaying the past or planning the future, just being present to the simple physical sensations of lying down, of breathing, of gradually releasing into unconsciousness. Your body knows how to sleep, has been doing it since before you were born. Sleep is ancient, shared by animals from insects to elephants, a time when the brain processes memories, when the body repairs damage, when energy is conserved and restored. You don't have to make sleep happen, you just have to allow it. Stop interfering with the natural process your body wants to engage in. And as you allow it, as you sink deeper, you can carry these thoughts about ancient Earth like gentle companions, images without urgency, facts without pressure to remember them. Picture the slow drift of continents, moving at the speed fingernails grow, patient and inevitable. Picture the patient wearing away of mountains by rain and ice, grain by grain over millions of years. Picture the slow accumulation of sediment on ocean floors, eventually compressing into rock, eventually being uplifted into new mountains, eventually eroding again, cycling through forms in a rhythm that never ends. Picture evolution testing new forms, some persisting, others going extinct, the branching tree of life always growing new branches while old ones die back. All of this is happening right now, too slowly for you to perceive directly, but continuously, certainly, according to laws and patterns that have operated for billions of years. Mountains are rising somewhere, eroding somewhere else. Magma is forming in subduction zones, working its way upward, eventually erupting to create new rock. Rain is falling, dissolving minerals, carrying them to the sea. Organisms are being born, living, reproducing, dying, participating in ecosystems without knowing that's what they're doing, just following their natures, fulfilling their niches. And you're part of this vast web of processes, temporarily separate by virtue of having a discrete body and individual consciousness, but ultimately connected to everything through shared chemistry, shared history, shared physical laws. The same gravity that holds you to Earth holds the moon in orbit, and the planets around the sun, and the solar system in the Milky Way. The same weak nuclear force that allows stars to fuse hydrogen into helium in their cores operates in your body at the atomic level. The same evolutionary principles that shaped dinosaurs and trilobites shaped humans and continue to shape all life. There's a deep unity underlying the apparent diversity of the universe, and recognizing that unity can be profoundly restful, a release from the illusion of separation. A recognition that you belong here, that you fit into the great pattern, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Not because of destiny or divine plan necessarily, but because this is where you are. This is what resulted from billions of years of cause and effect, and it's okay. It's more than okay. It's the latest chapter in an epic story that started with the Big Bang and continues through you, and beyond you into futures we can barely imagine. Rest in that story, let it hold you like the Earth's gravity holds you, gently and firmly, creating the foundation for everything you do, every breath you take. The planet spins beneath you at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, orbits the sun at 18 miles per second, rotates around the galactic center at over 400,000 miles per hour, moves through space toward Andromeda and the Virgo cluster at nearly 1,000,000 miles per hour, and yet you feel perfectly still, perfectly at rest, because you're moving with it, part of it. Not separate from these cosmic motions, but participating in them. Sleep is like that too, a participation in natural rhythms. Brain waves slowing from waking beta through relaxed alpha to the theta waves of light sleep, and eventually, the deep delta waves of restorative sleep. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens and regularizes. Your muscles release their tension. Your conscious mind steps back and lets the unconscious mind take over, processing the day's experiences, sorting memories, solving problems in ways the conscious mind can't. Trust this process, this ancient mammalian pattern of sleep and waking, rest and activity, contraction and expansion. All animals with nervous systems sleep in some form. Even jellyfish show sleep-like states. It's fundamental to how nervous systems function, requiring periodic downtime to maintain performance, like machines needing maintenance, but far more elegant, far more self-organizing. Your body knows what it needs, knows when it's time to rest, and all you have to do is cooperate. Stop overriding the signals. Stop insisting on staying alert when alertness is no longer needed. Let go, release, allow. Think of a leaf falling from a tree in autumn, how it doesn't resist, doesn't cling to the branch, just lets go when the time comes, spirals down through the air in whatever pattern the wind creates. Lands wherever it lands, begins the process of decomposition that will return its nutrients to the soil, feeding the tree it fell from, continuing the cycle. That leaf doesn't worry about its purpose or whether it made a difference. It just was a leaf, did what leaves do, and then let go when the season changed. There's a lesson in that simplicity, that acceptance, that participation in cycles without resistance. You can be like that leaf, just letting go, spiraling down into sleep, landing wherever sleep takes you, trusting that it's all part of a natural process, that you'll wake when it's time to wake. That rest serves purposes your conscious mind doesn't need to understand or control. Just let it happen. Let yourself be carried on the currents of fatigue and relaxation, drifting deeper with each breath, each thought becoming hazier, each sensation becoming more distant, until you cross that threshold where you're no longer aware of being awake, where consciousness dissolves into the different state we call sleep. And in sleep, you'll dream or you won't, remember or forget, process or simply rest, and all of that is perfect. All of that is exactly what's supposed to happen, part of the rhythm of being alive. Being human, being a brief configuration of ancient atoms on an ancient planet spinning through an ancient universe that somehow became capable of knowing itself through you. What an extraordinary gift, what an improbable achievement, what a brief and beautiful moment in the vast sweep of deep time. Rest now, knowing you're held by forces older than mountains, part of processes older than oceans, made of stuff older than Earth itself. All of it coming together in this moment to create the experience of you, resting, breathing, being. Sleep well, deeply, peacefully, surrounded by billions of years of history and futures yet to unfold. Let your mind drift back once more to those ancient seas, the first oceans, warm and rich with dissolved minerals, tinted green with iron that would eventually rust and settle, creating those banded formations we can still see in rocks billions of years old. Those oceans covered almost the entire planet because the first continents were small, just tiny cratons of lighter rock floating on the denser basalt of the ocean floor, growing slowly as volcanic island arcs collided and fused, as sediments accumulated around their edges, as the lighter material gradually assembled into larger masses. The first supercontinents formed and broke apart billions of years ago, their names exotic and unfamiliar: Valbara, Kenorland. Continents we know only from fragments of ancient rock scattered across modern continents, pieces of a puzzle geologists are still trying to solve. These ancient landmasses have been recycled multiple times through subduction and mountain building, their original configurations lost to the grinding gears of plate tectonics, preserved only in the oldest, most stable cores of modern continents called cratons. The Canadian Shield, the ancient heart of North America, contains rocks up to 4 billion years old, among the oldest on Earth's surface, scraped clean by Ice Age glaciers that revealed the ancient stone beneath. Walking on these rocks, you're touching Earth as it was when life was just beginning, when the atmosphere was still toxic to modern organisms, when the moon loomed larger in the sky and days were shorter. These rocks have witnessed almost the entire history of life, have been buried and uplifted multiple times, have felt the weight of ancient mountains and seas and ice sheets, and yet they remain, patient witnesses to deep time. Australia's Pilbara region contains stromatolites, layered structures built by cyanobacteria that are 3.5 billion years old, some of the earliest evidence of life on Earth. Modern stromatolites still form in a few places like Shark Bay in Western Australia, where high salinity keeps grazing organisms at bay and allows cyanobacteria to build their layered mounds in peace, doing what their ancestors did billions of years ago, continuing traditions older than mountains, older than any plant or animal. These living fossils, organisms whose basic form has remained relatively unchanged for hundreds of millions or billions of years, remind us that evolution doesn't always lead to increasing complexity. Sometimes a simple form is so well adapted to its environment that it persists essentially unchanged for enormous spans of time. Horseshoe crabs look almost identical to their ancestors from 450 million years ago. Nautiluses, beautiful shelled cephalopods, have remained similar in form for 500 million years. Coelacanths, large lobe-finned fish, were thought to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs until a living specimen was caught in 1938 off the coast of South Africa. A shock that reminded scientists how much we don't know about life in the deep oceans. These discoveries of living fossils, organisms thought to be extinct but found alive and well, bring a special kind of joy to scientists and nature lovers, a reminder that Earth still holds surprises, that the past isn't entirely past, that some threads of life's great tapestry extend unchanged from the deep past into the present. The dawn redwood, a deciduous conifer, was known only from fossils until living trees were discovered in China in 1941. The Wollemi pine, another ancient conifer, was found in a remote canyon in Australia in 1994, fewer than 100 trees surviving in the wild. A lineage stretching back 200 million years to the time of dinosaurs. As you relax deeper, picture these ancient survivors, these bridges to vanished worlds, still growing and photosynthesizing in remote forests, still following the same life patterns their ancestors followed when the world was radically different. They've endured ice ages and warm periods, the rise and fall of dominant species, massive extinction events, continental drift, and they're still here, still doing what they do. Patient and persistent, unaware of their own antiquity, just living. The fossil record, incomplete as it is, has given us windows into so many vanished worlds. The Burgess Shale shows us the Cambrian explosion of animal diversity. The Solnhofen limestone in Germany, where Archaeopteryx was found, preserved Jurassic organisms in exquisite detail, jellyfish and insects and feathered dinosaurs with every delicate structure intact. The Messel pit in Germany contains Eocene fossils, primates and horses and bats from 50 million years ago, preserved with stomach contents and skin, and even color patterns visible. The La Brea tar pits accumulated Ice Age mammals for tens of thousands of years, creating an incredibly rich record of life in Southern California when mammoths and saber-tooths roamed. Each of these fossil sites is a treasure, a gift from the past, a place where conditions were just right for preservation. Most organisms that die are consumed by scavengers or decomposed by bacteria and fungi, their remains scattered and destroyed, leaving no trace. Fossilization requires special circumstances: rapid burial, lack of oxygen, mineral-rich water, stable conditions for millions of years. The odds against any individual organism becoming a fossil are astronomical, which means the fossils we find represent a tiny, biased sample of past life, preserving those organisms that lived in environments conducive to fossilization. Despite this bias, despite the incompleteness of the record, we've still recovered millions of fossils representing thousands of extinct species, enough to sketch out the broad history of life. To understand the major transitions, to see patterns of diversification and extinction, to marvel at forms that seem designed by an imagination more creative than any human could invent. Nature has tried body plans we never would have thought of. 5 eyes and a trunk-like appendage tipped with a claw, circular mouths ringed with teeth. Bodies covered in spines pointing in every direction, shells coiled in spirals or stretched into straight cones or flattened into discs. And among all this diversity, certain patterns emerge, certain solutions that evolution discovers again and again in different lineages. Eyes have evolved independently dozens of times, flight at least 4 times in vertebrates alone. The streamlined body shape of fast-swimming predators has appeared in fish, ichthyosaurs, sharks, dolphins, penguins, all unrelated but all converging on the same general form, because hydrodynamics favors certain shapes. This convergent evolution shows that while the specific path evolution takes is unpredictable, contingent on countless factors, there are constraints. Certain solutions that work better than others for certain challenges, certain forms that emerge repeatedly because they solve problems efficiently. Your body displays many of these solutions. Eyes that focus light onto a retina, a brain that processes information, lungs that exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, a heart that pumps blood through a closed circulatory system, limbs with bones and joints that allow movement, skin that protects and regulates temperature. These structures are the products of hundreds of millions of years of trial and error, kept and refined because they worked well enough for your ancestors to survive and reproduce. You are the beneficiary of all that experimentation, that testing, that gradual improvement. And yet your body is also full of quirks and compromises, evidence of evolution's path-dependent nature, its inability to redesign from scratch. Your eyes have a blind spot where the optic nerve passes through the retina, a design flaw that cephalopods avoided by evolving their eyes differently. Your spine is adapted from a structure that evolved for horizontal quadrupedal locomotion, which is why back pain is so common in bipedal humans. Your pharynx is shared by the digestive and respiratory systems, which is why choking is possible. These are not signs of poor design, but signs of evolutionary history, of structures adapted from older forms, making the best of existing body plans rather than starting fresh. Embrace these imperfections, these evidences of your heritage, these connections to your ancestors who crawled on all fours, who lived in trees, who breathed through gills, who were simple chordates with just a notochord and nerve cord, who were even simpler worms without any backbone at all. Every stage of your evolutionary history left traces in your body, markers of where you came from, who your ancestors were, what challenges they faced and overcame. Consider your hand, with its opposable thumb, capable of precision grip and power grip, able to manipulate objects with remarkable dexterity. This hand is a modified paw, which was a modified fin, which developed from the paired appendages of the first fish to venture onto land, which descended from the fins of lobe-finned fish, which evolved from the fin folds of even more ancient fish. The bones in your hand, the radius and ulna in your forearm, the humerus in your upper arm, these same bones appear in modified forms in the wing of a bat, the flipper of a whale, the foreleg of a horse, all of us sharing this basic skeletal pattern because we all descended from the same tetrapod ancestor 360 million years ago. This shared heritage, this common descent, links all vertebrates in a great family tree, with closer relatives sharing more similarities and distant relatives showing more differences. But all of us carrying the marks of our shared past in our bodies, our genes, our developmental processes. When you were an embryo, you had pharyngeal pouches that in fish develop into gills, but in you developed into structures in your ears and throat. You had a tail that was later reabsorbed, leaving only the coccyx, your vestigial tailbone. These developmental echoes of evolutionary history, called ontogeny, recapitulating phylogeny in its simplified form, show how evolution works by modifying existing developmental programs rather than inventing entirely new ones. As you drift further towards sleep, let these connections comfort you, these realizations that you're part of an ancient family, related to every living thing through common ancestors stretching back through time. Your cousins with the trees and the grass, with insects and fish and fungi, all of us sharing the same basic biochemistry, the same genetic code, the same cellular machinery. Because all of us descended from that first cell, in that first ocean on the young Earth. Life is one thing, one phenomenon that has diversified into millions of forms but remains fundamentally unified at the molecular level. The carbon-based chemistry that powers your cells is the same chemistry that powers bacteria and redwood trees and blue whales. The ATP molecules that store energy in your mitochondria are the same in all organisms that use aerobic respiration. The ribosomes that build proteins in your cells are essentially identical to those in bacteria because they evolved so early and are so fundamental that any significant change would be lethal. You're running on ancient software, billions of years old, updated and modified but never completely rewritten, carrying the legacy of the first cells forward into the present. And your DNA, that remarkable molecule that stores the instructions for building and running your body, is a library of history, a record of your ancestry written in chemical letters. Geneticists can read this record, comparing your genome to those of other organisms, tracing the mutations that have accumulated over time, reconstructing the evolutionary tree, determining when different lineages diverged, confirming and refining what paleontologists learned from fossils. The genetic evidence and the fossil evidence tell the same story, agreeing on the broad patterns and many details. Two independent lines of evidence, converging on the same conclusions about life's history. This convergence, this agreement between different methods of investigation, gives us confidence that we're understanding Earth's past correctly, that we're reading the record accurately, that the story we've pieced together about ancient Earth is true in its broad outlines, even if many details remain uncertain or unknown. Science doesn't claim perfect knowledge, doesn't pretend to know everything, but it does claim reliable knowledge within certain domains, knowledge tested against evidence, knowledge that makes predictions that can be verified or falsified, knowledge that grows and improves as new evidence is discovered and new methods are developed. The story of ancient Earth is one of science's great achievements, a narrative assembled from countless observations and measurements and experiments, from radiometric dating of rocks, from analysis of fossil remains, from study of modern organisms and ecosystems, from examination of Earth's magnetic field recorded in ocean floor rocks, from seismic studies of Earth's interior, from satellite measurements of continental motion, from ice cores and tree rings and sediment layers. All of it fitting together into a coherent picture of a dynamic planet changing over billions of years. This picture is beautiful in its complexity and simplicity, showing us a planet that follows physical laws, that changes in response to forces we can measure and understand. That's shaped by processes operating over timescales from seconds to billions of years, all interacting to create the world we see around us. There's no need to invoke anything beyond natural processes to explain Earth's history. No gaps that require supernatural intervention. Just matter and energy, following the rules of physics and chemistry and biology, creating patterns and structures of incredible beauty and complexity through the simple operation of natural laws, repeated endlessly over vast spans of time. And you're part of this natural system, not separate from it or above it, but embedded in it, a product of it, subject to the same forces and processes as everything else. The same gravity that holds planets in orbit holds you to Earth's surface. The same thermodynamics that drives stars and galaxies governs your metabolism. The same evolution that shaped trilobites shaped you. Your nature looking at itself, the universe studying its own structure, matter organized in a way that allows for self-awareness and curiosity and wonder. What a strange and marvelous thing to be, this brief coalescence of atoms into a form capable of thought and feeling and choice. You didn't choose to exist, didn't design yourself, didn't earn the right to be conscious through any effort of your own. You simply are, as a gift from the universe. An outcome of billions of years of physical processes creating conditions for life, and then life creating conditions for consciousness, and then consciousness creating conditions for the kind of reflective awareness that allows you to contemplate your own existence and place in the cosmos. Receive this gift with grace, with gratitude, with acceptance. You're here, alive, aware, and that's extraordinary regardless of what you achieve or accomplish or become. Your worth isn't something you have to prove or earn. It's inherent in your existence, in your participation in the grand story of the universe unfolding. And part of that story is rest, is sleep, is the nightly surrender of consciousness to unconsciousness, trusting that you'll return, that morning will come, that life will continue, that the story goes on. So let go now completely, releasing any remaining tension, any lingering thoughts, any resistance to sleep. You've held on long enough. You've stayed alert through another day, dealt with whatever challenges arose, did what you could with the resources you had. Now it's time to rest, to let your body repair and restore itself, to let your brain process and integrate the day's experiences, to simply be unconscious for a while. Freed from the burden of awareness, dissolved into the void from which you'll emerge refreshed tomorrow. The earth continues its patient turning whether you're awake or asleep. The stars continue their ancient dance across the sky. The universe continues its expansion into the endless future. And you can rest knowing that none of this depends on your vigilance, your effort, your attention. It all happens whether you watch it or not, and right now, you don't need to watch, don't need to understand. Don't need to do anything at all except breathe and rest and allow sleep to come in its own time, in its own way, naturally and inevitably as night follows day. Picture one last image as you drift off. Earth from space, that famous blue marble photograph, the whole planet visible at once, clouds swirling white against the blue oceans and brown continents. So beautiful and fragile looking against the black of space. That's home, that's where every human who ever lived was born and died, where every story unfolded, where all of history happened. On that small sphere of rock and water and air spinning through the void. You're down there somewhere, a tiny part of that whole, connected to all of it through the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, the gravity that holds you, the magnetic field that protects you, the atmosphere that warms you. You belong here on this ancient planet in this brief moment of cosmic time, exactly where you are, exactly who you are. A temporary arrangement of ancient atoms that happen to achieve consciousness and is now releasing back into unconsciousness for a few hours before returning tomorrow. It's all okay. It's all as it should be. Rest now deeply, peacefully, held by earth, held by time, held by the vast impersonal kindness of natural processes that require nothing from you Accept that you exist and participate in your own small way in the great unfolding of being. Good night, child of Earth, made of stardust and seawater, heir to 4 billion years of life's persistence, carrier of consciousness into the night and through to the morning. Sleep well in the knowledge that you're part of something vast and ancient and ongoing, something that will continue long after you're gone. Something beautiful and terrible and utterly indifferent to your worries and fears and hopes. Something that simply is, eternally present, forever becoming, never finished, never complete. Always in the middle of the story, and you're here for this chapter, this brief moment, this fleeting gift of awareness before returning to the darkness from which you came and to which you'll return. The great cycle of existence that includes everything, holds everything, transforms everything, continues everything, forever and always without beginning or end. Just the eternal now in which you rest, breathe, and finally, gratefully, let yourself sleep. In the silence of night, as your breathing slows and deepens, remember that the very oxygen you're breathing was created by living organisms, mostly phytoplankton in the oceans and plants on land. Continuing the work that cyanobacteria began 2.5 billion years ago. Every breath connects you to the entire biosphere, to the great community of photosynthesizers who transform sunlight into chemical energy and release oxygen as their gift to the rest of us. You participate in this exchange without thinking about it, breathing in what plants breathe out, breathing out what plants breathe in, an ancient partnership older than any animal, older than any forest, a relationship so fundamental that neither partner can survive without the other. The nitrogen that makes up most of the air you breathe, that inert gas that dilutes the oxygen to safe levels, has cycled through the atmosphere for billions of years, occasionally being fixed into organic compounds by specialized bacteria, then released again when those compounds decompose. Nitrogen is essential for life, a key component of amino acids and DNA, but most organisms can't use atmospheric nitrogen directly. They depend on nitrogen-fixing bacteria to convert it into usable forms, another partnership, another connection in the web of dependencies that makes life possible. These cycles, the oxygen cycle and nitrogen cycle and carbon cycle and water cycle, all operate continuously, moving elements between living organisms and the non-living environment, between atmosphere and ocean and land and biosphere, maintaining the conditions that support life. Earth's atmosphere is not an equilibrium state, not what chemistry would predict for a planet this temperature and distance from the sun. It's a disequilibrium state maintained by life, particularly by photosynthesis, which keeps oxygen levels high and carbon dioxide levels relatively low compared to what they would be on a lifeless world. This living atmosphere, this biosphere-maintained composition of gases, is one way scientists think we might detect life on planets around other stars. If we find a planet with oxygen and methane coexisting in its atmosphere, gases that react with each other and should disappear unless constantly replenished, that would suggest biological activity. Living organisms maintaining an atmosphere far from chemical equilibrium. We've already started analyzing the atmospheres of exoplanets, worlds orbiting other stars, looking for these biosignatures, these signs of life at interstellar distances. So far, we haven't found conclusive evidence of life elsewhere, but the search continues, and the number of known exoplanets grows every year. We've discovered thousands of worlds, from hot Jupiters orbiting so close to their stars that their surfaces are molten, to super-Earths in the habitable zones of red dwarf stars, to planets in multiple star systems, to rogue planets drifting through interstellar space without any star at all. The diversity of planetary systems is astounding, showing us that our solar system is just one configuration among countless possibilities, not necessarily typical or special. just the one we happen to arise in. And that's okay, that lack of cosmic specialness. We don't need to be at the center of the universe or unique in all the cosmos to matter, to have value, to find meaning in our existence. We matter because we're here, because we're alive, because we're conscious, because we can appreciate beauty and seek truth and care about each other and create art and music and stories. Our significance is local, personal, human-scaled, and that's enough. We don't need cosmic importance to justify our existence. We exist, therefore we matter, at least to ourselves and to each other, and that's sufficient. Let this perspective ease any anxiety about purpose or meaning or cosmic significance. You don't have to figure out the meaning of life or your place in the universe tonight. You don't have to solve any philosophical problems or answer any ultimate questions. You just have to rest, to sleep, to let your body and mind recover from the day so you can face tomorrow refreshed and restored. The big questions can wait. They've waited billions of years already. They can wait another night while you sleep. And in your sleep, your brain will do its work, consolidating memories, strengthening important neural connections, pruning away unused ones, solving problems your conscious mind was stuck on, processing emotions, integrating experiences, doing all the invisible background work that makes consciousness possible. Sleep is not wasted time, but essential time, as important for your health and functioning as food and water. A biological necessity that evolution built into every organism with a nervous system, because it works, because it provides benefits that no amount of stimulants or willpower can replace. So honor your need for sleep, respect this ancient mammalian rhythm, allow yourself to surrender to it without guilt or resistance. You've done enough for today, whatever you did, however much or little you accomplished. You've lived another day, kept yourself alive, maintained your body and mind, participated in the world however you could, and that's enough. That's always enough. You don't have to earn the right to rest. Rest is a need, not a reward, something your body requires regardless of productivity or achievement, and you deserve to have your needs met simply because you're a living organism with those needs. The planet spins on, carrying you through the darkness toward another dawn, another day, another chance to participate in existence, to experience whatever comes, to respond as best you can to whatever life presents. But that's tomorrow's concern. Tonight, there's only this. The soft darkness, the quiet room, the comfortable bed, the slow rhythm of breathing, the gradual release of consciousness into sleep, the gentle drift downward into rest. Deeper and deeper, letting go more completely with each breath, each heartbeat, each moment of relaxation spreading through your body from head to toe. Feel your scalp relax, your forehead smooth, your eyes rest gently in their sockets, your jaw unclench, your tongue settle soft in your mouth. Feel your neck release its tension, your shoulders drop, your arms grow heavy and still, your hands open and rest. Feel your chest rise and fall with effortless breathing, your belly soft and relaxed, your back supported, your hips settled, your legs heavy and warm, your feet at peace. Your whole body letting go, releasing into gravity, supported by the bed, by the earth beneath it, by the solid ground that holds everything up. That's been holding things up for billions of years, and will continue holding you now as you sleep. You're safe here in this moment, in this place, held by forces that have held countless beings before you and will hold countless beings after you. Ancient forces, reliable forces, forces that require nothing from you but allow you simply to be, simply to exist, simply to rest in the knowledge that you belong here, that you're exactly where you should be, that everything is as it needs to be right now in this moment as you drift deeper into sleep, deeper into the gentle darkness, deeper into rest. And as you sink into that darkness, know that it's the same darkness from which you came, the same unconsciousness you knew before you were born. The same peaceful void that existed before you existed and will exist after you cease to exist. Not frightening but restful. Not empty but full of potential. Not nothing but the ground of all being. The source and destination of everything. The great mystery that holds all answers. The silence that contains all sound. The darkness that makes light visible. The sleep that makes waking possible. The death that makes life precious. You move through these cycles every day, every night, waking and sleeping, activity and rest, consciousness and unconsciousness, never truly one or the other but always in transition, always in the process of becoming, always in the liminal space between states, and that's where you are now, in that in-between place, not quite awake and not quite asleep, drifting, floating. Suspended between worlds, between the day that's ending and the night of sleep that's beginning, between effort and ease, between doing and being. And it's okay to be in this uncertain space, this neither nor place, this threshold state where transformation happens, where consciousness releases its grip and something else takes over, something older and wiser than thought, something that knows how to sleep without being taught, something that will carry you through the night and bring you back to morning, whole and rested, ready or not for whatever comes next. Trust that process, that ancient rhythm, that cycle of waking and sleeping that's been operating in organisms for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans, long before mammals, long before consciousness became reflective and self-aware. Your body knows what to do. Your brain knows how to sleep. You don't have to control it or manage it or make it happen. You just have to allow it, stop preventing it, step out of the way and let nature take its course. Let sleep come as it will, in its own time, in its own way. Gentle and gradual or sudden and complete. It doesn't matter. It's all fine. It's all part of the natural variation in how sleep happens. And however it happens for you tonight is exactly right, is exactly what you need, is exactly what your body and brain have decided is appropriate for this particular night. And you can trust that decision, trust that wisdom, trust that your organism knows what it's doing even if your conscious mind doesn't understand or approve. So let go of control, let go of effort, let go of trying, and simply allow, simply accept, simply receive the gift of sleep that your body wants to give you, that your brain wants to give you, that life wants to give you, because rest is essential, because tomorrow requires energy, because you can't keep going forever without stopping, because even the earth rests in its own way. The northern hemisphere sleeping through winter while the southern hemisphere wakes to summer, then switching back and forth, the endless dance of seasons, of light and dark, of activity and rest, of being and becoming. And you're part of that dance, that rhythm, that pattern moving through your own cycles, your own seasons, your own times of growth and dormancy, activity and rest, and right now in this season, in this cycle, in this moment, it's time to rest, time to sleep, time to let go and trust and allow yourself to be carried on the currents of fatigue and relaxation into the deep waters of sleep, where dreams may come or may not, where consciousness dissolves into something else, something unnamed, something known only by its absence in the morning when you wake and realize you were gone for a while, transported somewhere beyond awareness, beyond memory, beyond the reach of words or thoughts, into pure rest, pure being, pure existence without the burden of knowing you exist. Welcome that dissolution, that temporary ending of self, that small practice for the larger ending that will come someday when your life is complete, when your time is done, when your atoms are ready to become part of other things, other organisms, other stories, continuing the cycle, continuing the flow, continuing the great transformation that never stops. That's been happening since the beginning and will continue until the end. If there is an end, if there's not just endless transformation, endless recycling, endless becoming without any final state, just change continuing forever, and you a brief moment in that endless change, a temporary configuration that arose and will dissolve, that appears and disappears like a wave on the ocean. Made of ocean, never separate from ocean, just a momentary form that ocean takes before settling back into itself, back into the great undifferentiated wholeness from which all forms emerge and to which all forms return. Rest in that wholeness, that unity, that underlying oneness that connects everything to everything else, that makes separation an illusion and isolation impossible. That ensures you're never truly alone because you're always part of the whole, always connected to all that is, was, and will be through matter and energy, through space and time. Through the simple fact of existence in this universe that somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, includes you, includes your consciousness, includes this moment of rest and release as you finally, completely, utterly let go and fall into sleep, deep and dreamless or rich with dreams. It doesn't matter, both are perfect. Both are exactly what you need, and you can trust that, trust the process. Trust the night, trust yourself. Trust life, trust the universe. Trust that morning will come and you'll wake refreshed and restored and ready to live another day in this brief, precious, improbable existence that's yours for now, for this moment, for as long as it lasts. And then it will end, and that's okay too. That's part of the pattern, part of the plan, part of the great unfolding, and you can rest in that knowledge, rest in that peace, rest in that acceptance of what is, what was, what will be, knowing that it's all okay, it's all as it should be. It's all part of the story, the ancient story of earth and life and consciousness, and you, resting now, sleeping now, at peace now and always, forever held by the planet that birthed you, by the stars that made you, by the universe that dreams you into being, night after night, dream after dream, breath after breath, heartbeat after heartbeat, until finally, peacefully, gratefully, you sleep.